Hello, you are listening to 91.3 FM KUWS, a joint service of Wisconsin Public Radio and the University of Wisconsin-Superior. My name is Annie Dugan. I am the curator and gallery director here at UWS for the Kruk Gallery, and I am joined in the studio by Susan Dunkerley Maguire, a teaching professor in the visual arts here at UWS, and the current artist who has work in the Kruk Gallery. The title of the exhibition is Illusion of Certainty, and I'm going to be talking with Susan today about her exhibition. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you for inviting me to have this conversation today.
Yes, so you have put together an exhibition in the Kruk Gallery that is the way I have sort of thought about it and I had the pleasure of setting it up with you and working through some of these ideas with you, and I was struck by what a sort of transmedia thinker you are, and how when I set up any exhibition with an artist, you get sort of a look into how they think about things. And what I think is fascinating on how you look about things is that you are always looking, right? This exhibition includes photography, digital projection, sculptural work, painting. You're looking 3D glasses. So there's something for everyone as an artist, and I think that it's reflective too of the depth of knowledge that you share with your students here at UWS, because you are you've taught photography, you've taught printmaking, you've taught painting, you've taught digital design. How do you think about yourself as an artist? You know, do you sort of put a comma, Susan Dunkerley Maguire, comma photographer, or do you just say comma artist?
I've always thought about art in the most expansive of ways. That's not how I was taught. I really came through art school, well, the University of Missouri, and then the Pratt Institute, during a time back in the 80s when art was really categorized. And I think, that's a very university thing. You must specialize in an area. And so that I always, I wanted to learn everything. So my first undergraduate degree was art education and then studio art. I have both those degrees because I didn't want to limit myself to one media, and that let me into all the studios. And so it's pretty rooted. I think that's not uncommon in this generation of artists, that we most of us have been trained in a wide variety of media.
Yeah. So the exhibition is titled Illusion of Certainty, and when you walk in, one of the first things you see is sort of a hanging piece. You see a whole series of hanging pieces that are made up of the material that is used to make them is particularly interesting. And I am wondering if you might talk about what we're looking at. Like, just physically, what are we looking at?
When you first encounter those pieces, you're looking at a metal-framed piece of glass. The metal frame, to me, is very reminiscent of old, flea market find metal-framed thing, or empty metal frames that I used to collect and probably have a few around. And it just seemed like the right solution for the glass. It's also reminiscent of little small windows or portals. So they are meant to be looked at, but you also then discover you can look through them. And everything shifts as you kind of look through them. The glass itself, it's hard to see because they're framed, but they are 1 inch thick. They're about 10 pounds a piece. And I think that's the way the stained glass was stored. And I happened upon a trove of that and was given permission to forage freely through the piles. And yes, I love the glass. I had already been working with images that I was setting up in a window. I had a little kind of a porch that was just all windows, unheated, very cold porch in Saratoga Springs, New York, where I was working. And so there was only about one or two places I could set a view camera up, and so it was always up against these windows. So I just made the window into a little flat place in which I could collage and arrange little objects that I just limited myself to things I found on a walk or right around in that neighborhood at first.
Yeah.
And then I, kept going. But so the glass was reminiscent of that.
And that idea of window, is certainly one that has a lot of precedence in art history. And,
yes.
and certainly right, you're looking through. I brought in, there's a piece that I think probably anyone who's bought a poster for their dorm room might have on the wall, and that's a Rene Magritte, The Human Condition, where it's a painting of, you're looking through a window and you're looking at an easel of a painting of what potentially is beyond that window. And he writes about that, and I just want to read a couple quotes because I think it relates to, so the exhibition has a number of window-like pieces throughout, and I'm wondering, I'm going to read this quote and see if it resonates a little bit with some of those ideas. So he says, Magritte says, "This is how we see the world. We see it outside ourselves, and at the same time, we only have a representation of it in ourselves. Questions such as, what does this picture mean? What does it represent? Are possible only if one is incapable of seeing a picture in all its truth. Only if one automatically understands that a very precise image does not show precisely what it is." And, your whole idea of illusion of certainty, to me, resonates or has parallels to those ideas of, is this what I see? What do I see? Those kinds of questions as an artist and as a viewer as well.
Yes, and I love the way you bring things back around to art history and artists that it reminds you of. I'm a big fan of art and of all things, and I am familiar with that piece. It wasn't something I had in mind, but his quote makes me think of how, just in setting up the show, bringing out some of the work that's older, 20, more than 20 years old, and then combining it with the new, but seeing that work differently because of the new work in that context, in the way that you arranged it, kind of is the same sort of thing. It's about paying attention, but I'm seeing them differently, so not the same as maybe somebody who's first encountering them for the first time.
Yeah.
But that meaning does shift with time because it resides in our minds.
Yeah. And certainly, a window, what you see outside your living room window is never going to be the same, right? You're always going to, yes, it's the same scene idea, but it's never going to, there's some sort of fascinating impermanence. So that sort of brings in, again, this fact that you are an artist working through time.
Yeah.
And you've brought in some really beautiful pieces that relate to yourself as a human being, as an artist as well. So I'm thinking of the pieces that hang are grounded on the gallery floor with circles. Yes. And there's lint. There's some circles of lint, so your own household lint, as well as rocks. And there's other relations to your life as a human being. So can you talk about that thread throughout as well? It's sort of, just the fact that there's domesticity in what we're looking at.
One of my earliest memories is picking pine cones with my mom, and how she wanted a particular, a clean pine cone, not one that was all whatever. But anyway, that kind of aesthetic appreciation of these things that you can find anywhere is pretty much ingrained from the beginning. And I have parents that are forager collector types, and it certainly is strong in my work. And it's been interesting to see how that's kind of blossomed into lots of different artists' work. I think of Sarah Z, and so it's a what you might call a practice. But those particular things, I've named those circles invisible labor, and I've built them before in the same sort of way. I have a ring that I use as to build a framework within to build them, and that sense of ordering. I like to get lots of people come and collect agates on my road, so I'm not alone in this hobby. It's a relaxing way. When I lived in Texas, it was fossils. I could do the same circles with my Texas rocks. In fact, I thought about that because I could do Missouri, Texas, and Minnesota rock formations. But it's that ordering, and in a larger sense, I thought those circles worked well because the little glass windows are dispersed throughout the gallery, and that kind of connects them in a different way. But that the ordering of that to me is similar to, and why I think I worked so well with you. Is really great and challenging and exciting to have you, position and think about where you wanted to put the work and where you wanted to frame it, and what you wanted to put next to things, because that ordering that we're taking these very commonplace things, what could be more, common than lint, but you're taking it out of its ordinary existence, and you're positioning it, and you're ordering it, basically ordering. I keep going back to that word, in a way that kind of makes us more alert. It calls our attention. And I would say it's the same sort of thing as a poet and how they order words in a very specific way. We're all using the same common language, but we see it somehow differently. There's a rhythm to it now, and it kind of holds our attention in a different way. It makes that whole gallery space, what I think of it, it's kind of a poetic sort of space where you're maybe if you're on alert, and if you're in the right frame of mind, you can, kind of calls your imagination forth to kind of wander around.
Yeah. So the other piece that I was trying to pull out maybe a little bit of that idea of working across time is that you have a beautiful projection in the far corner that's slightly askance against a wall. There's a glass there. There's a glass panel that it's projected on. Mm-hmm. And so it's, again, calling into what we've already talked about with the window and seeing through. So the projection looks different when it's projected on just a glass versus the wall, versus you have drawings hung that are, so yes, it's projected on all of these. And the projection itself, if people spend the time to really look, they can see, an arm or a head underneath this table that is your son at a moment in time.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about that piece? And again, I think there's this beautiful connection back to your life as a human, right? You have you bring up, collecting pine cones with your mother, and that urge to sort of collect and order and have this balance with the natural world, but also, and then also you're just the passage of time, because you're at a sort of an interesting moment in your life as a family as well.
Yeah, well, we all have to, I think we all make the most honest of work when it's really rooted in our own lives and our own experiences. I say that, and there's other things that I'm also interested in as an artist or as someone who loves to look at art. But for me, that I just I make better work when I'm it's really rooted where I am in my own circumstances, and so being a mom for the last 18 years has been what I needed to spend most of my time on. But being a mom who's also an artist means that, and you can relate, that I've got kids one kid, and he's underfoot a lot. He spent a lot of time between, under my legs and under my desk and under the table playing while I was working on things. So when I could, he was very present. I also, I didn't mention the idea, but the finding of things like those agates and things on my walk from the earliest of the body of work that I photographed in the windows is really this. I like to work with chance or contingency, and there is nothing more contingent than a child who is not going to pay any attention, especially to his mom, about what to do and where to go. But I've made a lot of work with my son as kind of a contingent subject. I've either set up circumstances where then, he can't resist. He's going to go there, kind of like the joke on the internet where you put a white piece of paper down and the cat's going to always go there. You can do that with your children or neighbors' children's, and children at play to me is a challenge, and I loved being in that moment and photographing. I don't know what I'm going to do with all that work, because I've also felt a lot of pressure, maybe it's academic, to not have that work be what your work is about. Like that's too personal, and that's not that's not a grand enough subject, or it's not it can be an issue, but it's just my where I was at that moment, and my son was very happy to play and and be looking at his iPad or whatever it was he was looking at under there, and
that there is, I think the other thing that you see, so the, and I'll bring this back full circle, I promise, but I'm looking, I'm thinking, no, you're in a good way. But this idea of transience and sort of chance, you in the window, and I keep coming back sort of the windows as a grounding piece, that to get the full experience of them, because on one side of those glass, of the hanging pieces as well as the pieces on podiums, you're actually printing on those. So you've done the photo emulsion, and so it's, instead of paper, you're using these glass pieces to print images on.
Yes.
And then on the other side is sandblasted images.
Yes, we did digress a long
way
from the material you're looking at.
Right,
on those.
But then the glass itself has this amazing material, because it is, glass itself is somewhat impermanent in it and amorphous in its, because it isn't a solid or a liquid. It's this sort of in between state. So, and to look at this object, you have to look through it, right? You have to, it's
all its imperfections.
Yeah. And
Yes.
so it becomes a whole sculptural piece with these different layers. And so now I got off, I think, on too much of a tangent. But I think I wanted to ground us in that again, because I think it affects how we see the newer work in the exhibition, which is the projections. And so, and I think you've taught digital classes on how you think in layers, right? Which is a different thing for artists and also just people who are, used to writing to think about. So
Painters work
sure,
in lots of layers.
yeah. So can you talk about there are paintings as well as in the work.
Yes.
So there's layers in a lot of ways.
Yes. And you want your question?
I guess my question is, do you, maybe as a painter, as a digital thinker, were you thinking of those layers when you made those digital pieces? Were you thinking, the
Yes.
exhibition came about because you wanted to work in projection? You wanted to
Yes.
see how your work could translate in projection?
Yes, and they're so new. I'm not sure. I mean, the images that I used were older, and if I had been thinking about making a time lapse, they would have been much more smooth. It would have been a very different experience of me taking the pictures. I guess they would, they're almost more like a kind of a little disjointed stop motion rather than a time lapse where you would really see that smooth transition moving through, which I love, and maybe I would move forward and try some of those. In other words, I'm kind of sneaking up on the moving image, and right now I'm working with these still images. I still would like to animate them and layer them more. To me, they're the start of something. They've got me thinking, and I really like seeing the images large and projected. It's such a different way of looking at that work and being immersed in it, seen large, and I do love the change in scale.
Yeah, the change in scale I think is fascinating, and what you bring in to project on. So we talked a little bit about the projecting on your son's
Drawings.
Mm-hmm. And then in the back room of the gallery, there is a projection on a window that you've hung, and you can see clearly on the window this the scene from the window that you've arranged, and then sort of bleeding out, you see the inverse of that. And so you're I wouldn't say tricking, you are playing with
Like tricksters.
yeah, right, with what we naturally see a window and a glass. And I think the other play that I think is delightful in this space is the fact that you're playing with projection of what is some of the sorry, I'm digressing a little bit, but oftentimes in our digital world, we are looking through the glass of a cell phone or the glass of an iPad.
Yes.
And so rather than through to the natural world, we're looking at this
Yes.
Digital screen. And I think that you're playing with both of those dualities in the exhibition as well, of we construct what we see, certainly in the projection world, and so that piece in the back room is because what is shown in the window is different from what's on the wall. You are playing a little bit with what people see. So you're playing with that idea of, to me, it comes back to that Magritte idea of, is this what you see? It's and what you understand. In that back room as well are these series of paintings that you did that shift with if the viewer is wearing 3D glasses, so red, green glasses, or looking through a red and blue, or looking through a red and blue transparency. So there's this shifting of just a visual shifting. Can you talk about the process of making those? And because those came about also as you were looking at the projections. So I think when I say I love watching your mind at work, is that you were working on these projections, but at the same time you were thinking about all of these other all of these other works.
It's a big mess, moving in a lot of different directions. But it's been wonderful teaching painting here, and it's really pushed me to get back into color and thinking in color. Primarily, my work was kind of sneaking up on color, but out of necessity a lot of times, but also because I love the process. It's been black and white. Excuse me. But so I've been doing demos. I think about, not to compare myself to Bauhaus artists, but a lot of some of the great work I love, Albert's or Paul Klee's examples that they made for color studies and things has, it just kind of got me moving in that direction. Making these little paintings, demonstrating simple processes, and just having fun with how color interacts. And as I'm, working with students and things. So, but going back to the projected imagery, I just really have been interested in thinking about, and it all comes back to color and filters. As photographers, we use a lot of filters, not just to make things warm and cute, but also to shift and change the meaning of, or, it can be ever so slightly. But I am just calling our attention to how things are filtered. And the paintings in once again, it's kind of by chance that I discovered that they work so well for that idea. And so I look at that presentation of mixed messages back there along with that video, and I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to kind of really push it farther, perhaps with some collaborations, and keep going with that and really develop it further.
Yeah, that's wonderful to see. That I think that watching you work, I see how what a drive you have to be curious about what materials can do, and continually pushing those ideas of materials. Are there other? So actually, I want to make sure there's a little, and maybe you don't even want to mention it, but there's a little. I don't want to say hidden object, but there's maybe a little lanyap or a treasure in the exhibition. Yes. Do you want to say anything about that, or should we let people discover that?
There's quite a few little treasures in there, but I did put a little robin's nest in there that is a prop from a bunch of stuff I have for teaching drawing and painting. But I did think that this show, which happens the same year that my son is gone for the first time, and our son, and so I thought this show is really a in my own personal life, it's a real marker for what's coming next as he's moving on.
Yeah, and that you are sort of in this space of transition as well, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
the work
the
itself
transition
is transition, like there's a shifting of meaning, throughout the and when we say meaning, it's shifting in what colors we see, shifting in how we or what materials we're using to communicate. To be human is to imbue our world and things with meaning. We, most people, I think,
I would say Henry David Thoreau was somebody who kind of railed against this, get these objects out, don't have any attachments. But, we talk about bottles having necks and cups have lips, and, we're always, as humans, it's human to anthropomorphize things, and I enjoy playing with that in art, and so there's lots of objects in there that you can anthropomorphize, or you can just look at them as aesthetically interesting things. But as a group, it starts to, plays back and forth with that, and I love that in poetry, and and so I'm drawn to working in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've talked just briefly a little bit about sort of where you're going next. Do you, what are some threads that you're wanting to continue and pull forward?
I'm very interested in continuing with getting more skilled with doing the video work, and but working with the glass, working with the filtered imagery, but there's it's very different to think in terms of a space, in terms of this experiential way of constructing an exhibition. And that's really what I think has really galvanized me more than anything else. I like the way, I have a collection of, or at my disposal, an ability to use these obsolete technology, the overhead projector and the light box, and things that we've kind of left behind as we move forward in our digital world. And I enjoy working with those and playing with the potential they have for.
Yeah, you have such. It has been such a pleasure seeing how you bring, again, those very physical objects into a digital realm. So you have there's two hanging backdrops that are, one is projected against and one is used to almost like project the red and green glass, right? It's almost like so again, you are taking these objects that are part of our history of photography, and
seeing what else we can do with them.
See how can we then merge those with our contemporary tools. So it has been such a gift seeing you at work in the gallery, seeing your work in the gallery, and having it shared with everyone. So I should say that the gallery is open to the general public daily, Monday through Friday from 3 to 7 p.m. It is staffed. It is based in the Holden Fine Arts Center on the campus of UWS. There is a parking lot on the other side of the building that is open after 5 p.m. And folks can come and enjoy the exhibition. So thank you. Oh, go ahead.
No, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, Susan. You are listening to 91.3 FM KUWS, a joint service of Wisconsin Public Radio and the University of Wisconsin Superior.